Welcome to Brute Facts, where we have beards, beer, and brains. Tonight we got a good one with Jake, the Muslim Metaphysician, from themuslimmetaphysician.com. And on YouTube, he recently just did a debate with James White, and that is definitely one you want to check out. So hang around. We got an interesting show coming. Mr. Jake, how are you doing?
How's it going, Eddie?
Pretty good, pretty good. So I heard that you had a fun little time with one of our Calvinist brothers. Yeah, we'll get into that. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? You were Catholic and became Muslim. How did that work?
Yeah, so I was raised in a Roman Catholic home. So I actually went to Catholic school when I was little for a few years until we transitioned to public school. My entire family is Roman Catholic. And I mean, long story short, I became a Muslim about a little over 10 years ago now, when I was in my early 20s. So I'm giving away my age there. So when I was in university, or kind of like towards the end of high school, senior year, I had a good friend of mine was Muslim, and he introduced me to Islam. And I know I'm just going to give like a summarized version, and then we could go into more details if you have questions. Okay. Basically, he introduced me to Islam, and when I first started looking into it, I planned on refuting my friend. So I said, you know what, I'm going to read this Quran, which is the Islamic holy text. And, I'm going to show that this guy's wrong, that he doesn't know what he's talking about. And, long story short, I read the Quran and it made a lot of sense to me. And within a matter of about a month or so, I became a Muslim, and I've been a Muslim ever since.
Wow. Yeah, I guess coming from Catholicism, given their dogma of incarnation and Trinity, you hear about true monotheism, and kind of makes the wheels start spinning a little bit. So what was it? What was it? Those issues within orthodoxy of Christianity that kind of led you to decide Islam was true?
Yeah, well, that was a major portion of it. So when I was a Catholic, and I don't want to make it seem like, I was some Catholic that was, studying to be a priest or anything like that.
Right.
So I don't want to use that against a, Christian audience or anything like that. But I knew enough, and I understood the basics of the Catholic dogmas, as you said, things like the Trinity, incarnation, and even the atonement. On a basic level, these things didn't really make that much sense to me, especially the Trinity and the incarnation. I'm just talking from a layman's perspective. For people who know my stuff now, I was not thinking anything that much in deep in terms of the theology. I don't want to make it seem like that. A lot of that stuff came later on. I just, from an intuitive perspective, it just didn't really make much sense to me. So when I read the Quran, which is the the Muslim holy text, those issues kind of got cleared up in terms of, for example, the Quran. There's a belief in one God. There's not three persons. Jesus Christ is a prophet of God, which I was surprised to find out. He's a prophet of God. He's a messenger. We also believe that he was the Messiah. We believe in, the virgin birth and a lot of things that Christians and Catholics would be familiar with. But it denied that he was the divine Son of God or God the Son. And then also with the atonement as well, basically the Quran says that every man, this is sort of the Bible. It says every man in the Old Testament anyway will be judged for his own sin. And over and over and over again, the Quran, like a drumbeat, says that no soul shall bear the burden of another. And so that made sense to me. It's like, okay, well, what I do and what I believe, I should be held accountable for it and not anybody else, and vice versa. So from just a basic intuitive perspective, the way that the Quran dealt with these fundamental dogmas that you've said of the Catholic religion, it just made much more sense to me. And, there were some other things like about the Prophet Muhammad that I said, oh, this must be a real prophet. And so I embraced Islam basically in virtue of that, because it lined up with my intuitions about who God was and what his message was to mankind. And then kind of just went from there, studied Islam more and more, and I'm still studying it today.
Yeah, and I'm already getting some flack in the chat. The true monotheism, Spartan, was one kind of a tongue-in-cheek with Jake being in Islam. But not only that, I have recently considered myself an agnostic Christian because I can't make sense of the Trinity nor the incarnation. So I'm actually leaning towards Unitarianism. And I mean, my mind's still open. I'm studying both sides of it. So just want to make sure I didn't run off some of my Trinitarian brothers there.
Everybody chill out in the chat. We're just,
That's
we're
right.
having a nice conversation. Don't get too worked up.
So how did, if you don't mind me asking, how did the family take it? Because I know that within Catholicism and so kind of Catholic and Italian go hand in hand. I mean, it's really tightly wound. How did they receive you?
I mean, let's start with my parents. My mother wasn't too happy. She still isn't. She thinks, she told me less than a year ago, well, Jake, you're just in a phase. And I'm like, Mom, I've been a Muslim for over 10 years. Like, you got to get over it sometime. It's not a phase. But so there goes that. And then my dad, honestly, he doesn't really care. The rest of my family, I guess they kind of just see it as weird and they don't understand it, but that's it. They don't really. Yeah. I mean, they know what I do, like on YouTube and stuff, and they're not that much into it, so they don't even ask me questions because once I get going, it's not going to stop. The conversation's just going to go. So they don't even bring it up. But I mean, if you ask them, they would probably like, I don't know. I don't understand it. The guy's Muslim, but we don't know what's going on. So that's probably it. Yeah.
It's funny how that works when, I like to try to stay as humble as possible, but obviously having far more knowledge than most of the fundamentalists in my family. Yeah. When I have a position that I bring up that's not traditional according to fundamentalism, it's like they're just like, okay, whatever. Nobody really wants to go down that road.
Yeah, they don't even want to deal with it.
Right. So
yeah. They're like, pass the bread, Eddie.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It's just a phase. It's funny because that seems to be what it all comes down to. It's like, no, liking veal was a phase until I found out what exactly it was. And, so those are phases. You don't go 10 years on a phase.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I had some other struggles, like, I was at that time, living with family and, praying in the home and,
Oh yeah,
reciting the prayers in Arabic and things like that. And I had my mother, I answered a phone call once, and, for those who aren't familiar, like the Islamic greeting is salam alaikum, which basically means peace be unto you. It's interesting. Jesus actually, when he appeared in the upper room, he said peace to his disciples. But, I just answered the phone, and it was one of my Muslim buddies, and I just gave him salams. And when I got off the phone, my mom said to me, "Don't you ever speak Arabic in my house again." And I said, "Whoa, really?"
Wow.
I'm like, Mom, it's just a language. What's the big deal? Like, I wasn't propagating the religion or anything. I just gave a greeting to my friend on the phone. And so I was like, oh man, this isn't going to go over too well. So, I've had to deal with stuff like that, but, it's been 10 years now, and, some people think it's a phase, and others they don't even want to deal with it, but kind of over it. I'm married. I have a Muslim wife, praise God. So it is what it is. It's either get with it or get lost. That's how I take it now.
Right. That's, yeah. And did you I just have to know, did you tell her to not ever do any math?
No, I didn't. No, I didn't. But it's interesting because my mom's a Catholic, and those who don't know, they have one of the famous prayers that they recite is the Hail Mary.
Right.
And so basically what happened was my mom said something to me like, "Well, Jake, I prayed to Mother Mary about you all the time." And I said, "Oh, really, Mom?" And she told me this, and so I was thinking about it one day, and I just asked her out of the blue. I said, "Mom, do you believe that Jesus is God?" And she said, "No, of course not. He's the Son of God." And I said, "Oh, really? Because it's Catholic understanding and dogma." I don't know if I used that word at the time, but she said, it's a Catholic teaching that Jesus is actually God the Son. He is God, not just the Son of God. And she said, "No, I don't think so." I said, "Mom, remember how you said to me that you pray every day to Mother Mary for me?" She said, "Yeah." I said, "Okay. Well, in the prayer," and it goes like this: "Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God." And then I stopped and I said, "So remember, when you're saying Holy Mary, Mother of God, who are you talking about? Mary is the mother of Jesus. And so you're saying that Jesus is God because Mary's the mother of God." And then she, just with a snap of a finger, turned around and said, "You know what, Jake? You're right. Mary," or she said, "Yeah, you know what? You're right. Jesus is God." And I said, "Mom, you just told me about 5 minutes ago that Jesus wasn't God, that he was just the Son of God." So, at that point, I said, she doesn't know what's going on. My family in general, that's the basic idea. They don't really know what's going on. And so I don't even really get into it with them. I just sort of leave it at that,
Yeah, I don't blame you. That's, and one of the things that I've learned about at least American Catholics is they don't even know what the Catholic Church teaches.
Exactly.
Yeah. Because I was Southern Baptist, fundamentalist, anti-Catholic, and I would recite all these different things that are in the catechism to, my mother-in-law, and they're all just like, huh? And I'm like, yeah. And these are the things that you have to believe
Exactly.
because the Pope infallibly declared them dogma. So yeah, where are you at?
Exactly.
But yeah,
Exactly.
that's absolutely true. And it's really, I mean, nothing against your family, but the fact that we families are so deeply have this a religious bias just kind of embedded, that if you go against it in any kind of way, whether you're atheist, agnostic, or you Muslim, or any kind of, it's just like people have such a hard time accepting it. And it's like, that's not your identity. That's not who you are. You're Jake. You're the same person you were before, and to know what happened to a lot of the atheist friends that I have, because I have a lot of atheist friends, and here, it's the old cliche, there's no love like Christian love. And I don't mean that, I don't mean to pick on my brothers and sisters, but it's something we have to deal with.
Yeah. I mean, I think it happens with any family, pretty much any faith that you're going to be a part of. Especially when you make a big change in your life, as far as they're concerned anyway, with changing a religion, it doesn't matter really what it is. You're going to catch some heat, and that's just the way it is. You just got to decide for yourself what you think the truth is, and stick to it. That's it.
So what made you decide to start the journey for the Muslim Metaphysician?
Yeah, so what happened was, kind of going back a little bit, I actually, when I first came into the religion, because one of the reasons why anyways, I didn't really know that much. I didn't know anything about Islam when I first started reading the Quran. Like I said, I was trying to prove my friend wrong. I didn't know anything about it. I thought it was this weird religion that Arabs were the only ones that, held to it. And I found out, wow, actually people all around the world, even people that look and talk like me, can be Muslim. So this is how ignorant I was about it. And so anyway, when I first became a Muslim and I was just reading the Quran, I didn't know anything about this thing that's called hadith, or what we call the Sunnah, which is basically, for the viewers, the prophetic example of the Prophet Muhammad. And so in Orthodox Islam, we believe in two sources. We believe in the Quran, which is the holy text that we believe is the real revealed word of God. But then we also believe in a secondary source, which you can view somewhat as tradition, but it's basically the sayings, deeds, and actions of the prophet, right? And I didn't know anything about this. So I started reading the Quran. I'm saying, well, I don't see anything about this. But what wound up happening to me was my buddy Alex from high school, he would say things to me, and I'm like, bro, that's not in the Quran. What are you talking about? And he didn't know. He honestly didn't know, because he had just things in his head, and he didn't know whether he was quoting it from the Quran or the Hadith or what. And one day I was like, dude, that's not in the Quran. And he's like, oh, maybe it's in the Hadith. And I was like, well, what's that? And so he started explaining it to me. And I said, well, that doesn't really make sense to me. What's that all about? So anyway, long story short, I was what's called a Quranist for about 8 years, in which I only believed in the Quran, and I didn't accept any secondary source. I didn't take this hadith or this other tradition seriously. And I was in that position for about 8 years, and then about almost 3 years ago now, I want to say over 2 years, I transitioned into what's called a Sunni Muslim, sort of a traditional Orthodox Sunni Muslim, where I accept now the prophetic tradition that's been passed on to us for a number of different reasons we can go into. But anyway, the reason why I'm telling that backstory is because when I was a Quranist, I used to have my own YouTube channel, and I was like very against the Orthodox Sunni Muslims. Like I was like a Quranist fundamentalist, and I would go after the Sunnis. In fact, they used to set up near my university. There's like a big train station because I'm from New Jersey, and the university I went to is in a city that literally connects right to New York City. So there's a big train station over there. And every Saturday, these Orthodox Sunni Muslims used to go over there to set up what we call dawah camp. It's basically inviting people to Islam, what you guys would call evangelism, you know. And I used to go there and show up just to argue with those guys. I wasn't even talking to Christians or atheists. I would just show up to try to, you know, talk to them. And so I'm gonna get to the point. I know I'm going on a little bit.
No. Go ahead, man.
Yeah. The reason I'm bringing it up is because I was so into this idea. So I started my own YouTube channel. I don't know how long ago it was, maybe 6 years ago now. I wasn't the Muslim metaphysician at that time. My channel was called The Criterion because that's one of the names of the Quran. It's called Al-Furqan, which means the criterion. It's the thing that distinguishes truth from falsehood. And so I had that channel. I was mainly geared towards those kind of people. And then after I converted or transitioned to a more traditional Islam about 2 or 3 years ago now, I changed my name, my YouTube channel name to the Muslim Metaphysician. And I started getting more into, I started getting out of that sort of sectarian stuff. Mm-hmm. And I started getting more into the Christian theology stuff, some Islamic theology, explaining my stance on certain things, as well as dealing with atheists, you know, arguments for God's existence and that type of thing. And the reason I chose the name is because I'm very interested in metaphysics. In fact, I have a bachelor's degree in philosophy, so I'm trained in analytic philosophy mainly, and I just always loved the subject of metaphysics. And I'm Muslim, so I went with the Muslim Metaphysician. I had a catchy tune to it, and I've been doing that for about, like I said, 2-3 years now. And but before I go any further, that's kind of how it came about.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet. Myself, I love metaphysics, you know, and I love when I hear somebody, because I'm a philosophy guy, I'm not a theology guy, and which, you know, probably explains a lot of the struggles I have with Orthodox Christianity, is because if it doesn't make sense, it doesn't make sense. Yeah, exactly. That's just where I'm at now. So and I love when people say, you know, well, metaphysics is useless. And I'm like, that's a bit of metaphysics. You know, exactly. So it's, anything that's not physical that we're not discussing, we're into metaphysics. So what is the major, if you could just quickly summarize, as far as Sunni and Shia go, what is the major difference? Is it just the hadiths that that's followed, or?
That's part of it, but how it originally started was more of a political issue, which was after the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, died. There was some question or concern about who was going to be the next leader for the Muslims, what we would call a Khalifa. And that word actually means to come after. And so the first Khalifa was the leader who came after the death of the Prophet Muhammad. And so historically, the split between what later became Shia and Sunnis was on who was supposed to lead the Muslim people after the Prophet died. And so the modern day Shia have this idea that it should have actually been Imam Ali, where if people are familiar with Muhammad Ali, that's where the name comes from. Ali was actually the Prophet's cousin, and so they viewed succession in terms of leadership more along familial lines. And so because he was the Prophet's cousin and very close to him in that sense, and obviously I'm trying to make it very simple to the audience. So any Muslims watching, don't say, oh, Jake, you forgot about this point or that point. I'm trying to make it as simple as possible, guys. Because of that, they viewed it more along those lines. They said, oh, he should be the successor, right? And whereas the Sunnis had this more of a kind of, for lack of better term, democratic understanding. It should be like a council where the main core companions of the Prophet met up and said, okay, let's figure this out. Who's going to be the leader? It was sort of a vote type of thing. And they wound up voting in, basically. They agreed upon that it would be Abu Bakr, and he wound up being the first Khalifa, the first leader after the Prophet Muhammad died. And so the Shia, which means sort of to split, they were sort of a breakaway group in which they said, no, we don't like that. We think it should be the Prophet's cousin, Imam Ali. And so that's originally how it started as a more of a political thing. And then since then, it sort of developed further, and now there are significant theological differences. For example, the Shia believe in, the main body of them, they're called Twelvers. They believe in 12 imams, which the imam is basically the leader. And again, for simplicity's sake, it's almost like a pope-like figure. So you can imagine like 12 popes of succession, and where some of them believe to the extent that these imams are infallible, whatever they say goes type of deal. And so that was a theological development later on. And as Sunnis, we don't believe that. Many of their imams, the early ones at least, we actually love and respect, but we don't view them in the same way that the Shia do, as sort of these infallible figures, which many times they even attribute to them things like knowledge of the unseen or certain kind of powers that normally one would associate with God. And we think, well, you guys are just going a bit too far here. Right. And so as a Protestant, you're familiar with the Pope and this whole idea that, the Holy Roman Empire and the idea that, Pope can declare dogma, and he can, as far as when he teaches, it should be infallible and all this kind of stuff. For me personally, that doesn't really make much sense from a human perspective, especially when it's not even a prophet. I wouldn't say it's a regular guy, because I'm sure he's got some type of status, but anyway, never really made sense to me. So when I became a traditional Muslim, I was pretty much like, no, Sunni makes more sense. Right? If I wanted the Pope, I'd go back to Roman Catholicism. Right. Yeah, so that's the difference. But yeah,
and they're the ones who are trying to usher in the 12th Imam, I believe it is, that they're.
Yeah, so they believe in what's called the Mahdi, which we also believe, which means the guided one. But they believe he is the last imam, and he's alive, but he's in hiding. And towards the end, and he's been in hiding for a while now, God knows how long. But towards the end of times, he's going to come out and sort of usher in the end times type of thing.
Oh, pretty sweet.
Yeah, we believe in a similar thing as far as the Imam Mahdi, but we don't believe he's alive now, hiding out in a cave. We think he's going to come later on, and the whole eschatological thing. So But yeah, though, and there are other differences, but originally it was a political thing. And then the main theological difference is this position on the 12 infallible imams, you know. And I just don't see any evidence for it from the Quran, for example. I think it's they try to appeal to certain texts, but I just don't think it's there.
Yeah, it's crazy how many. I mean, how Abrahamic religions tend to kind of. It's like the same things have happened throughout time, like the Great Schism.
Yeah, similar differences.
Yeah, and it's turned into theological differences and huge theological differences. And but yeah, I'm with you on the whole infallibility thing. I've never understood how any human being could be infallible in anything that they do. And you and I are going to have to do a show on eschatology, because I love eschatology, and I have no idea about, Islamic eschatology. So, but that's interesting. And one of the things that I noticed was the philosophical rigor that goes into Islam in general. It doesn't matter if you're Sunni, Shia, Kurdish, whatever it is. There's this, a lot of people don't realize the monotheistic arguments for God. A lot of them actually come from Islamic thought. So just if you could just quickly, your ideas on the philosophy side of it, because I love philosophy myself.
Yeah, sure. So one good example that I could give that some of the viewers might be familiar with is what's called the Kalam cosmological argument, right? And which, basically whatever begins to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist. Therefore, the universe has a cause. And William Lane Craig, who's a Protestant Christian, is well known for popularizing that and sort of resurrecting it over the past, 30, 40 years. He's been doing it for a while now. And the reason he actually gave it that name was because in our tradition, one of the sort of, I guess the way you can explain it is, kalam, which has several different meanings, but it means word, or sort of, it's a type of dialectics. It's almost like a theological philosophy, almost like analytic theology that we have nowadays. And so we have this in our tradition, and this particular argument was highly developed and brought to deep sophistication by a thinker known as Imam Ghazali. And he was in the Kalam tradition. And so when Craig started studying this, he said, whoa, look at what these guys are talking about. Look at some of the arguments they're using. And so he dubbed it the Kalam cosmological argument, in sort of appreciation of the Kalam tradition. So we have this rich theological and philosophical tradition, even amongst people like Avicenna or Ibn Sina, we would call him, Averroes or Ibn Rushd, we would call him. Several of them, just great giants, and I don't agree with them on every point, but great giants as far as rationality, philosophy, theology, and some of the arguments that they used. And yeah, I absolutely love it, because we have such a rich tradition that I don't blame anybody, because I wasn't aware of it when I was a Catholic. I had no idea about the rich tradition of the Islamic theology. So yeah, part of what I do now is studying that, just trying to learn from, the greats before me, the ancients that came before me, and just trying to develop my own thought as far as how these things work. And, it's just a lifelong process. But yeah, in Islam, we have such a rich tradition with the theology, specifically on that particular argument. There were other arguments like Avicenna's contingency argument. And these things have been studied for a long time. A lot of these arguments are still popular today. And I use them many times in discussions, even with atheists. So I absolutely love, like I said, metaphysics and philosophy. And I enjoy to continue to try to learn more and more because just when this is my experience anyway, when you think you're coming up with like something clever and then you do a little bit of research and like, oh, dummy, somebody was talking about that like 500 years ago.
Right.
And so, it's hard to even come up with, when you do a lot of studying, you start to notice like a lot of these issues, like even you were saying about the Sunni Shia divide, you see different types of parallels in the Christian tradition, the Jewish tradition, ancient philosophy. It's just interesting how all of these things connect and are somewhat related in one way or another as far as human thought. It's very nowadays in the 21st century, as far as philosophy goes, it's really difficult to come up with a unique perspective or thought. Pretty much everything that you can say has already been said. And so, yeah, but we have and I would encourage people, whether you're Christian, atheist, or otherwise, to look into some of these things, try to study the different traditions. I myself study a lot of Christian theology, and I learn a lot from them as well. So I always encourage people, no matter what tradition you're in, to look into what people of different faiths have said. And, at least at the very least, you can learn from what they believe, and that'll help you to be able to communicate with the people who are in that tradition much better.
Yeah, absolutely. That was, to me, so I'm going to date myself. The first religious talks online I ever had was on AOL talk rooms. And I went into a religious talk room, and it could have been just my experience at the time, but I knew nothing about Islam, Muslims, or anything like that. Some of the most pleasant people that I had conversations with, and I kind of got the same feedback. It was like, usually I don't have good conversations with Christians. It's about apologetics or evangelizing or this or that. And some of the great, and there was actually an older gentleman that I talked to regularly who told me to take a look at the philosophical history of Islam. And what he had said was, while the Catholic Church had a hold on philosophy for Christianity, Islam thoroughly encouraged. And I was like, it wasn't like that. It wasn't like that at all. And then I started looking into it, and I was like, wow, there was, the medieval Islamic thinkers that were encouraged to be philosophers, to do these different philosophies. And, coming to philosophy in general, learning that there's a rich history of intelligence behind Christianity was actually surprising to me. I hate to say that, but it was. And then the same thing with it, because I went on a kind of like a journey. I went through this deconstruction from fundamentalism into agnosticism, and kind of went on this journey looking at world religions and things like that. And I was really mesmerized at the amount of philosophy and theology that's been developed throughout Islam. Christianity being older, it was a little more expected, I guess, on my part. So being a philosophy guy yourself, I can see exactly how you ended up into being a metaphysician. So.
Yeah. And you know what? It's interesting too, is that just one more point on that. Some people don't realize that people like the great doctor of the Catholic Church, St. Thomas Aquinas, actually was heavily influenced by Muslim thinkers. And in fact, another thing people don't realize is that certain Muslims were heavily responsible for translating Aristotle's texts into Arabic. And so a lot of his work actually survived through Arabic philosophy and the sort of the Muslim tradition. And he had an entire commentary on Aristotle's works. And anyway, long story short, that got passed through to the Christian tradition. And a lot of what Thomas Aquinas was dealing with was heavily relied on the Muslim preservation of Aristotle's works, and Ibn Rushd, or Averroes as would be known, the Latinized form of it, his commentary on Aristotle's work. So there's a lot of sort of interaction between the traditions that people don't realize. And when you study it, it's just absolutely fascinating.
So kind of switching gears a little bit, I have often heard complaints about kind of the same thing with Islam as Judaism, and that's the required practices, the praying multiple times a day, the study. But I think a lot of people don't realize that in Judaism, and I assume Islam too, the ultimate form of worship is study. Is there a tradition like that?
So I forget which Islamic scholar it was. It might have actually even been Imam Ghazali. I'm not sure, but we have this tradition where, based on what you were talking about, actually about the Islamic law, we call it fiqh, and studying, the scholars many times speak about it, just studying like one lesson of Islamic law is like exponentially greater than even doing your ritual daily prayer. And so to such an extent that not to say that you should leave your prayers or anything like that, but just how serious and it's taken within the tradition. Studying is really important. Like we have hadith sciences, we have sciences of Quran, learning how to memorize the Quran, which is very important for us because we don't believe in just preserving it in the written text. That's sort of secondary for us. We believe primarily that the text is actually carried in the hearts of Muslims and in our minds. It's because if all the books, all of the Quran were burned up and there was nothing left, we would still be able to next day put it all down on paper, because we just have quite literally millions of Muslims memorizing the Quran. So we have science of memorizing the Quran, how to recite it. If the listeners aren't familiar with, you can see the different recitation styles, commentary, what we call tafsir of the Quran, fiqh, which is basically Islamic law and how it's carried out. All of these hadith sciences, all of these different sciences are just so rich, and to even try to master one of them, it just takes years and years of studying. So, I love it because, even though I've been in Islam like 10 years, I'm a baby in most of that stuff. I try to, for example, memorize the Quran as a non-Arabic speaker, reciting the Quran and all that type of stuff. But in most of the science, I'm an absolute baby, and it's a lifelong journey to learn more of those things. But as far as the rituals, the laws, and the thing, I like it because I'm a very structured person. So I like to have that structure in my life to say, oh, okay, it's this time I'm supposed to be praying or doing this, or, we have the month of Ramadan where it's a month of fasting for the Muslims, right? and that that's coming every year, and it's always that month to, well, if you were slipping on this, all right, you got to get back in gear. It's a reminder for Muslims to be, first of all, thankful for what we have, all these different kind of things. But I like the structure of Islam, to have these things structured in a way to kind of keep you focused and on track, and that when you're sort of not, you can always say, okay, here's how I get myself back online. So for some people, they will be like, I don't like this. I don't like being tied down. I don't want to deal with these laws or anything like that. But for me, I think it's a blessing. So,
yeah, that was one of the things that I've been doing a lot of study into Judaism here in the last few months, and that was one of the things that I'm like you, I'm very analytical and I'm very structured. I have to have everything, I need this, and this. If you can give me a schedule of what I'm supposed to do every day, my life is glorious.
Exactly.
So going and realizing how much Christianity has kind of, and I don't mean to kind of beat up on Christianity. It's just easier to talk about these issues being a Christian myself.
Yeah.
One of the things that has, is appealing factor to me for Orthodoxy is a liturgical style of worship, the practices, the going through the motions kind of thing, so I definitely totally get that part of it. And there was one thing I wanted to ask. I didn't want backtracking kind of a bit. So in Judaism, numbers are extremely important. And I noticed when you were talking about the Shia and the 12th Imam, and so is there is that tradition carried on in Islam where numbers are, being multiples, being, I think.
Go ahead.
Well, no, I was trying to think of what the name was that they used. Gematria or gematria.
Okay. Yeah. I know what you're talking about. Yeah. The Muslims had and even prior to, the advent of the Prophet, they had, in a similar way that the Jews and the Hebrews had, that the letters of the alphabet had a particular numerical value. In Arabic, it's called abjad. It's the abjad system. And so they had that because they didn't really have their own, numerical structure. They just had the letters of the language, and then each one would literally have a value for them. So they have that in similarity. And then there are certain numbers that seem to be, I don't want to say, I guess you could say somewhat more significant than others. Like, for example, the number 3 and this seems to be a feature. It could even be in line with the Trinity as well. Some people say that the number 3 seems to be very important. For example, a lot of things that we do them 3 times over. So, for example, when we make wudu, or the ablution for prayer, sort of the cleansing before prayer, you don't have to do it 3 times. You can do it once. So, like if I'm cleaning my arm, I can do it once. But doing it 3 times as part of the ritual is like extra. It's seen as a good deed, sort of thing. So there are, and then it's not only that, it's with other things. The number 3 comes about. Also, the number 7 for the Arabs had a lot of significance. So in that respect, with the abjad system, as well as what I'm mentioning now, numbers were important for Muslims. Yeah.
So now it's time for the hard questions.
Okay. Let me strap in my seatbelt.
That's right. Does pineapple go on pizza?
Oh no, man.
Yes.
No, you can't do
Yes, I
that.
knew I liked you.
You
Yes.
can't do that, brother.
Yes,
That's from an Italian New Jersey guy where we have the best pizza. I'm sorry to break it to everybody. Okay, not New York. Don't listen to what they tell you, or over in Italy. All right, we've got the best pizza in the country right here in New Jersey. I can tell you, as God is my witness, brother, I have never had pineapple on a pizza, and I never will. You couldn't pay me enough money. No, that's heresy, brother. You're thrown out of the church at that point.
I love pineapple and I love pizza, but I don't like pineapple pizza. You don't put fruit. Well, I can't say that because tomato is technically a fruit.
I know.
But you don't add any other fruit.
Yeah, you just don't. You
pizza
can't.
Other than that. What about mint and chocolate?
Mint in chocolate? So like mint chocolate, you mean?
Yeah, chocolate mint.
I'm kind of indifferent to it. I'll eat it. Like I can have, for example, chocolate chip mint ice cream. I'll eat it every once in now and then. But I'm not crazy about it, but I don't hate it either.
You know what? I like Andes, the candy, chocolate and mint.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
But if somebody buys ice cream that has mint and it's chocolate ice cream, it's like, bro, I could have had chocolate ice cream and you got chocolate with mint. Why would you ruin my? It's not that bad, but it's kind of like adding toothpaste to it. I want chocolate.
Yeah, I hear you, man. For people who don't know, okay, I am an absolute ice cream freak. Okay. I have ice cream almost every day, right? It's almost like a fix. Yeah. But I'm a simple guy. I like all different kind of ice creams as well, but pretty much just plain vanilla. I'm good with that. I love vanilla ice cream. So, everybody in my family knows like Jake's the ice cream king.
Hide the ice cream. Jake's here.
Yeah, exactly.
Now I love ice cream, but my father-in-law like you're talking about. Every night before he goes to bed, has to have a bowl of ice cream.
That's me.
Every single night. He's like, I got to have a bowl of ice cream. I used to be like that with cereal. I was like a cereal freak, man. Every night before bed, it's like, even if I wasn't hungry, I wanted a bowl of cereal every night before I went to bed. So, and dare I say, I had sweet dreams. So being Italian, is pizza Italian or is that an American or is it a Greek thing?
I'm just gonna say it's Italian, just to try to add one more thing on the. Yeah, man.
I've heard so many arguments. It's like, no, it's an American thing. No, it's a Greek thing. It's like I like Mediterranean pizza. That's
I don't think I've had that. Is it good?
Oh well, it's with the slices of tomato and basil and let me make sure I say it right, mozzarella on it. So
okay, I know what you're talking about.
It's pretty dope. But
I like it.
Typically, it's just pepperoni for me. I'm pretty simple guy.
I can't eat pepperoni anymore, man.
Burn you alive?
No more pork. Nope.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
No.
You can't. Oh my gosh. See, I was thinking at one time myself, kind of giving up pork just because. Not just the Abrahamic prohibitions. That was kind of part of it, but if you look at the studies and things of how bad pork is for you, but the thing is, man, I don't know if you know much about Memphis, Tennessee. It is like the
barbecue central,
dry rib central.
Yeah.
So my specialty is smoking dry rub ribs. And I'm like, I love ribs. I could give up every bit of pork, even bacon.
Really?
But I don't. Yeah, I could get rid of bacon.
See, man, I could give up ribs. I mean, I've given up bacon too. Okay. Don't try to call it. don't call like the Muslim police on me. But one thing I do miss is bacon, man. I miss it.
Turkey bacon's pretty good though.
Yeah, but it's just once you have that pork bacon, man, it's not the same. And you see, the people who are sort of born into Muslim families, they don't get it. Like my wife doesn't get it. Like they have, because they've been brought up that way with almost an aversion to pork. You know what I mean?
But it's this disgusting thing that.
Yeah, but I'm telling you, it's good. And see, people ask me and they say, "Well, Jake, why did God decide to make pork prohibited?" And I said, like from my perspective, in our religion, people speculate about what you said, like the health benefits, or maybe it wasn't the way that the meat was back then. It was harder to make sure that it was preserved and healthy for people. I say, because there's nothing definitive in the text, it may be just a test from God that he made this meat so damn tasty.
So good.
And he just said, hey, look, don't eat this meat. Obey me. And it's a test. And I say, man, that it could be what's really behind it. I don't know.
You know what? That's a pretty good idea, because, man, it's like no scaleless fish.
Yeah.
What is it? Hooved animals, or is it non-hooved animals? It's one or the other. Shellfish, and it's like, oh my gosh, everything I love, was at one time a prohibition, and it's like, how could you do that? I mean, come on, bacon is salt and fat fried, where some of the fat comes out, but that fat fries the fat that's left. And you get to put more salt on it.
Exactly, man.
Yeah, it's like it's so glorious.
See, every time I used to get fries, I used to get bacon cheese fries.
That's the fire, man.
Can't get them anymore, man.
Have you ever tried? What is it called? It's it's a Canadian dish, and it's poutine. And it's brown gravy on French fries with cheddar cheese.
Nope, never had that one.
The first time I went there, and they were like, is that regular fries or poutine? I was like, oh, what the heck? What is poutine? And they're talking about gravy, and I was like, man, hook it up. Gravy makes everything great, But yeah, I'm with you, man. The bacon. And ranch, you gotta have ranch with it too.
I don't do ranch. See, I'm a plain guy, man. I don't,
bro. Bacon.
You're gonna hate me, bro. You're gonna hate me.
And ranch. What about sour cream?
No. Listen. Jay. You're gonna hate me.
Jay.
I do not like any condiments whatsoever. No ketchup. No mustard. No honey mustard, no barbecue sauce, no ranch, no sour cream, none of that, brother. Yeah, I'm picky, man.
Okay, so what you are is you're a food fundamentalist.
That's right.
And I mean that pejoratively.
That's right. Exactly. See, I'm the type of guy, they tell you, well, adding the sauce enhances the taste of the food. But I feel like, no, it takes away from the taste of the meat or whatever I'm trying to eat. It's like, no. I want to taste the main course. I don't want to just taste a whole bunch of ketchup in my mouth. Yeah. So that's how I look at it.
I'm going to put my my atheist hat on only because they're the only ones who I've ever heard argue for subjectivism. It's all subjective. It doesn't matter. There's nothing objective about it. It's all subjective.
That's right. That's right. They got that one.
Jake, thank you so much for showing up, man. I have had a fantastic time. It has been great. I learned a lot, man, and I really do appreciate you coming on and hanging out with us.
I enjoyed it, bro. Maybe you can do it again sometime. I enjoyed you having me here, man.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to see everybody out, and if you want to hang out in the backstage, I'll come holler at you in a few.
All right. Sounds good, man. Thanks.
Thanks, bud. Oh, cut him off. Dadgummit, that's twice I've done that. Twice. Jake, the Muslim metaphysician, check him out. I didn't even give you, Jake, I'm sorry. I didn't give you a chance to plug your stuff. I'll plug it for you. TheMuslimMetaphysician.com. It's in the description. Muslim Metaphysician on YouTube. He's on Twitter. He's on Facebook. He's everywhere. He's omnipresent. Yeah, there you go. There's your joke for the day. So if you could, I am looking for a few, not everybody, just a few Patreon subscribers, supporters, just to cover the cost of doing the show. That's it. I don't care about making money off of any of this. So if you feel like you like the show, you benefit from the show, you enjoy the show, anything like that, I do have a Patreon subscriber or supporter, and I actually meant to get his name so I could give him a shout out for it. But you know who you are. Thank you so much for supporting the show, and anybody else that feels like they would want to support the show or like the content, go ahead. Thank you, everybody, for showing up. It has been fantastic. Definitely want to look at probably having Jake on again because I had a great conversation. Have a good night, everybody.